So I'm here today with Mr. Leon Han. Thank you again for inviting us to your home to conduct this interview and providing us with this opportunity. So we'd like to hear from you regarding the details about your father's life, history, and the significance that it has played on yours.
Okay.
And so first we're just going to ask you some personal questions. So just to start off with, when and where were you born?
Okay. 안녕하십니까. First, thank you for coming, and also thanks to the San Francisco Korean American Museum give me the chance and opportunity to talk about my father's story. Yeah, my father is Han Sen-do. Yeah, he was a Korean liberation activist. So my name is 한명해. American name is Leon Han. 72 years ago, 1946, I was born in Shanghai, China, Wuzhongkou Harbor. Yeah, I was born on the ship. That ship was sailing to Korea. Yeah, boarded with Liberation Army members and the families, and many Korean families also. About 1,000 people board on that ship. I was born on that night. My parents board on the ship, so I was born on the ship. Yeah, I was very lucky and honored. My father, I was delivered by my father. Yeah. And on that ship, there were 2 babies was born. I was the last baby, and Liberation Army family going home. I was the last baby. Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the other baby that was born on that ship? I remember reading it in your book about the Liberation Army.
About 2-3 days earlier than me, the Park Si-jang 장군, Park Si-jang family got the daughters, you know. So I met these young sisters, 1969. First time I met her, we were all 23 years old. Yeah, so it's in the book. Yes, I'm very lucky, met her at that time.
And then just to move on to some details regarding your father, Han Sen-do now, what details can you recall about your father and about his life in Korea?
Okay. Once arrived in Seoul, it's 1946 May, because I was born in May. We stayed in Donghwa department store. That's today they call Sinsigae, and Myeongdong, close to Myeongdong, Seoul. That building, that time is about 5-7 story high buildings. We lived there. And my father was very busy every day, go downstairs for meetings. And also there's one interesting thing is there's a lot of wild pigeons flying all over. Those days, we all lack of food, and my mother's also lack of nutrition because just had a birth to me, So my father made the nets to catch the pigeon to make up for my father. So that's very interesting scenes. And then the same year in November, my father was assigned to the Korean Liberation Youth Association as a vice minister. But that time, they are not assigned to the military yet. Okay, so until the following year, the March 1947, they finished. They graduated from the Korean Army Academy, the 3rd special class. At the beginning, those activists is all senior and senior and have a relatively high rank officials already. So they are reluctant to go through the academy again because the Defense Department want them go through the Korean academy again. So they will consider them as legitimate Korean officers. So they, symbolically went through that 3rd class. So there were several people. I met only 2 of them. So here's some pictures, interesting pictures. Yeah. This is the picture they graduate, the 1947. You see they're wearing the dark uniform. They are the people came from China. So they are much senior, older peoples there. So I met here is Park Si-chang and Choi Duk-shin. I think the third one is my father here. I do not recognize other people's name. So here's the photo. Luckily, my mother saved all this photo for me. Yeah. Then there's some list here to identify those classmates. Some of them right here. So it's all documented in my book. Yeah.
So during this time, so this was right after you were born that your father was going into the military school. So these are all stories that you've heard from other members or through relatives.
Yeah, that's all before. Yeah, that time is only about 4 years. I mean, only 2 years old. Although my mother, sister, my cousins. So after he graduated from there, he was ranked as lieutenant colonels, and he assigned to different military units. So we lived in many cities. Many cities like Daegu. I don't remember. I cannot quote the name. Busan. Also, that's quite a bit cities. Jinhae. Yeah, Kunsan, Busan, Daegu. So finally, we settled in Busan. Yeah, we luckily stayed in Busan. So during the war, the North Korea trip never reached Busan. So we was very lucky, and we kept all my father's document, the photos here. Otherwise, all will be lost. Yeah. So here's several my father's photos here.
So all these photos.
It's original photo. Original photos.
That your mother had kept for you.
Yes. So this all in my book. Yeah, this all this. That's from 1947 to 1950. Yeah, and here's the original award my father was received from his unit.
So I know there's a lot of anecdotes that you were able to hear from family members and relatives. Do you have any specific memory that's personal to you that you remember about your father that you can share?
Not really. When my father missing, I was only 4 years old. But only something I still remember, like the Jeep. The car, my father has Jeep. I remember still playing that starter when go inside the car, and I push that starter, the car will move. So that one I still remember. But I don't remember my father's face because he's very busy in the military and all over. Once I arrived in Korea, that time is very chaos. Everything need to start all over. So he was very busy. So I don't really remember. But those things happening that time, my father's with us, but I don't really remember his face, only from the photos. Yeah.
So going back to your father missing during the Korean War, were there any efforts to look for your father after he went missing?
Yes. My mother is Chinese, so he has a language barrier. So I don't think she has too many contacts. It's very difficult to understand. And also, there's my father's driver soldiers came several times. He was also looking for my father's. He couldn't find any news from there. And those days, we didn't receive any information. I think that time, Korea War, 3 years war, fighting back and forth. Everybody's really unstable at that time. Doesn't know what happened. So that's the. And then after 1953 was over, my father never come back. So for living, then my mother always sold our house to one of the army generals, like our house there. So my mother used that money. We bought a smaller house in the Choryangdong area, and also opened a small Chinese restaurant for living. Yeah, that's in 1953. Unfortunately, not too long later, in Busan is a big fire. The 1950s, I believe it's in November at some time. 3,000 house and commercial building burned down. So our restaurant also, burned. Mm-hmm. So later again, for living in Korea, my mother's language areas, so only can open small Chinese restaurants until my elder sister married, and my brother-in-law is a Chinese businessman. So through his arrangement, and we moved to Taiwan. That's in 1956. I was 10 years old.
So then during the fire, so you're about 7-ish years old at that time, do you have any specific memories of your mom trying to search for your father?
Oh, not search. During the fire, I still remember that night, the skies, the red, where then we have to walk. My mother has to hold my hand to walk several hours to went back to our Choryangdong house. That scene I still remember. Yeah. And like I mentioned, we have less contact. So, and my mother's Chinese, so we only mostly stay in the Chinese community, So that's why we don't have much contact. Even this, my father's award is granted on 2005. We didn't receive until 2015, 10 years later, because we don't have a contact in Korea anywhere. Yeah. So.
Okay. I noticed in your book you had written 3 hypotheses about what you think had happened to your father, and then I kind of wanted to ask, how were you able to kind of come to those conclusions?
I talked with Professor Choi Duk-shin in Hangzhou, Zhejiang. He's specializing all these activists, the nickname they use, what name they follow. So he's, then based on what he also discussed with me, when once my father missing, we also wondering where he went. And some people say he may went back to North Side, and he died during the Korean War, and of course my father's hometown is Sinju, North Side. So some people said because of my father's colleague and some their superior, some also went to North Korea, those days situation. So some went there. So, but we don't know. But we later find out, even today we find that there's no information coming from North Side. So I believe my father never went to there. He's always loyal to the democratic systems, not the communist system. Sorry, today, communist system, they say, oh, it's, talk to each other then. Yeah.
Okay. I guess just to move on, so how was your life affected personally after your father was gone? And I know you mentioned your mother selling your home to get money for the business, but did you try to escape from Busan at that time, or how was the circumstances?
During the war, from history knows, North Side never reached Busan. Luckily we stayed in Busan, so back and forth. And those days, that time, my father's agent wife also suggests my mother go with her to the countryside to avoid this in the war. But my mother didn't didn't accept stay at home. So she think if my father come back, may not find us. So we didn't move. We didn't go to the countryside. Luckily, we didn't go. If we go to the countryside, the North Side is already invaded that area. So we saved all these documents. Very lucky. Then after say our siblings, I have 5 siblings. First sister, like I mentioned in our book, is adopted, sister, and she's our first daughter, and we total have 5. Then my sister got married early, about 17, 18 years old, married, and her husband's a Chinese businessman in Korea, so he helped us to move to Taiwan. Because it's very difficult for my mother, take care of us in Korea with language barriers, And so from my 2 sisters, they also attend Korean school. but the third sister and me and my brother, we never attend the Korean school. So sorry, I don't know much Korean. I try to learn. So after arrived in, of course, at that time, we are all very sad. But my father never come home. But I was too young to really feel the sadness, So, but as I grow older, yes, I do feel. Yes. Sorry.
No.
Yeah. Yes, my mother all the time talk about my father's. He say, I'm very assembly like my father. Okay. Okay. Yes, my mother left a very valuable stuff for me and the stories, and also mentioned many times there was his spirit. My father considered a junior Korean independent activist. There's a lot of senior people, so like my mother always mentions, of course, Kim Gu is the person, and Lee Chang-jung is the commander, and Lee Fan-sek, and Songbu Changgun, his wife also is Korean, Chinese. It's very nice to my mother, yeah, and of course Park Si-chang and Choi Taek-shin. I met Choi Taek-shin when he was Minister of Foreign Affairs, visit Taiwan. My mother visit Mr. and Mrs. Choi Taek-shin. They know in Shanghai, in Chongqing before. So when 1969, when I visit Korea, Mr. Choi Taek-shin, and they are the only I know. So I, visit him. Through him, he introduced me to Park Si-chang. Then I realized Park Si-chang was a very close friend of my father. Come together, same boat. And so we stayed a couple nights. His family, and he also told me some stories, very interesting. Yeah. 1956, I was 10 years old, we moved to Taiwan. The first things, my mother is, of course, a visit to Korean embassy. So at that time, Kim Hong-il Chang-gun was ambassador over there. Of course, my mother met him before. He's also about 8-9 years older than my father. He's a senior officers. So at that time, we came to Taiwan under my mother's passports. So we lost the Korean nationalities in the ship. Yeah. So then Kim Hong-il ambassador said, don't worry, when kids grown up, then they will issue a passport. Yeah, so later we had some trouble to receive the Korean passport. Until 1963, Choi Taek-shin come to visit Taipei, Taiwan, as a minister of foreign affairs. Then we met them, so they issued a passport to us. So I feel like that time was Korean again. Once we arrived in Taiwan, we don't have any Korean friends, only my mother's side. So we didn't have any chance to learn any Korean. Every time I was very anxious to meet Korean peoples, but language barrier. I was only about 10, 15 years old, doesn't know English yet, and doesn't know Korean. They don't know Chinese, so there's no contact. So until come to United States later time.
So the main basis of your family moving to Taiwan was because your mother had family over there, is that correct?
That time no family, because of language issues. Okay, basically my mother cannot survive in Korea, language issue. Once we arrived in China, my mother visited Kim Hong-il ambassador. Then he direct my mother, say, did you meet your relatives? Because they met my cousin sister's husband, also at that time in Chongqing. He also know a lot of Korean officers at that time, so they all know. So Kim Hong-il ambassador point, my mother said to you, did you know your relatives in Taiwan? So after that, then we find our grandmother and my relatives, you know.
Yeah. And then you you talked about after coming to the States, you were able to find more information about the documents. And so what was the turning point or the reason why your family decided to move to San Francisco? And why San Francisco in particular?
Oh, okay. 1960, my second sister married, came to Cupertino here, you know. So after that, my mother followed. Then when I finished my college education, 1971, now I came to United States with my wife. Then, you know, from there, we stayed in California more than now 35, some 40 years in here. Yeah.
How did your sister come to California? By boat, train?
Married. Yeah, that time is airplane is it's available.
Okay.
Even 1956, we from Korea to Taipei, Taiwan, we took airplane. I remember. Of course, that time is a 2 or 4 propeller airplane. You know, it takes a whole day from Korea to Taipei. Over stop over in Tokyo. Yeah.
Wow. And so that was the same as well too. How long did the flight take from Taiwan to the United States?
Oh, I not quite remember. Now, of course, now it's more than 10 hours. So those probably, I don't even remember. Much longer, double probably. Yes, but it's a direct flight.
Oh, wow.
Did not stop over, from Taipei to, yes.
That's interesting. That's so interesting. So then once you came to San Francisco, how old were you at this time?
26, about 26.
And then you were already married, so you had married in Taiwan and you came to with your wife. So after moving, how was your life like in San Francisco?
A little kind of easy because my sister's already here. During in Taiwan, when I was still student, my mother came in, I'm a student. I got some scholarship from China, Taiwan education department, so I was easy for living, So I saved some money, and also my mother, mailed me some, allowance. I saved the money, so I went to Korea, 1969, before I finished my college. So I went to there to look for my father's information there.
Was there a particular reason or like a turning point that inspired you to start researching about your father?
This always kept in mind. I need to know what happened to my father. So 1969, I was third year in college. I have summer break, so I visit. And also that time I have a contact because I met Mr. and Mrs. Choi Duk-shin. So I have someone when I go back, I can through this contact to look into the information. And also one of my classmates, cousin, he was a Korean one-star general in army. So I was really lucky. I visited him. Then he looked into the record and he passed on me this my father's records. All these third year graduates information. That's from him.
Oh, wow.
Then at the same time, Mr. Choi Duk-shin also, we talked to him. Then he say, one day we should go back together because he also came from our same hometown. So from there, after I come back to Taiwan again, was busy. So I moved to United States. Now I have a less chance to do any contact further because there in here it's very hard to to meet the Korean people those days. Yeah. Then this always kept in my mind. So until very late, about 5-7 years ago, when I have a chance in working, in China, then I spent some time. And the turning point again is my daughter's classmates. They know each other for 10 years, but she didn't know my daughter's grandfather's Korean. So 5 years ago, around 5 years ago, then she visited my daughter here. That I mentioned to her, I say, my daughter's grandfather is Gwangbukgun, and then she went back to talk to her husband's Korean. Oh, he said, no, he said, everybody looking for the Korean Gwangbukgun's family. Through her father's contact in Seoul, then we made a contact with a Patriot and the Veteran Department. So I visited them in 2015. Now I took all these documents, showed them, and my father said, oh, so after that, starting all this involved. So that's a 2015, October I visit. Then they showed me my father's very, important document here. He showed me this Japanese wanted list. He first time showed me, they said, that's your father. I don't recognize him. He was he's a military uniform. And then he handed to me this important informations. Then it's also noticed my father didn't wear the prisoner's uniform. If he get caught, he will wear the uniform, prisoner uniform, and take the picture here. So they never caught my father's.
So that was
very lucky. And the professor Chefung say, your father once get caught, maybe stay in the jail for a lifetime or get killed. So here's the very important information they pass on to me. Now from here, the website has a website, so I look into, then I get all kinds of information. Of course, there's a lot of information in Japanese word and the Korean, Chinese, and some, so I have to very hard time to learn this. Then after this, the 7 months I went back to China. Then my father has Zhongshan University, this Zhongshan University badge. Has this badge. That's 1936 on this uniform school, student uniform badge. I wrote this email to the school. I said, do you recognize anybody, this name? They say, yes, they do. So they sent me the very important, again, information. My father's school entry in the files. The school, you have to write down all the information. From here, I learned my great-grandpa's name. Never know before. But from this Japanese wanted list, from there, I learned first time I learned my grandfather's name. After that, from here, I learned the great-grandfather's name. So we have 7 generations name we can see from here.
So these details your mother had not known either.
My mother only sent me that badge. Those days, life's very hard. War, all the time, So then, lucky after war, war was over, we moved to Korea again, and my father was very busy outside, not home very often. So this is sometimes very hard, So didn't mention at all. But I have a badge, that one. So then look into his, or what department he studied, all this information. Then from there, they also, again, this another document came together. This is a very famous Yi Zheng-ho. This very famous, he's my father's guarantor for the school. He's a very famous person. Then from this one, then they send me attached, again, important document and the articles here. That's the Professor Chedok Shin. He has an article here. Then he mentioned in here, this articles involve 80 Korean students in Zhongshan University from 1931-32 until 1970. 80 students, and where they follow theirs, what the fake name they used, all this information. So in this article, one section talk about my father's. He lists 5 names there, but I don't recognize these 5, only 2. So I wrote him back. I say something. I don't recognize those, names. Then some story, of course, is not clear because only information not. He thought so. When one day I visit him. The first time he saw me, he said, "Are you Mr. Joe?" I said, "I'm not Mr. Joe." He said, "Oh, you're not Mr. Joe." I said, "I'm Mr. Han." In here, he said, "Oh, Cho Su-ang is also very famous later on." Then he said he thought my father is Cho Su-ang's 2nd or 3rd son. Okay, Cho Su-ang, another Cho Su-ang, this is very famous, I think, next to Kim Gu, since he's a diplomat. He's, all these publication to the world. He familiar, English, Japanese, Chinese, Korean. He's a very important person, So from there, I learned a lot from Professor Chadakshi. You can see the photos in the book, then because I only have a photos, then he made this other connection between. Of course, there's one section is complete source missing. And my father, Changsa, left it after then joined the Liberation Army. There's confused. So they thought the Cho Su-ang's son, it's my father. So all confused there. So.
This is just a lot of time and research that you've gone through. Is there something that you learned about yourself conducting this research?
No, not really. Very hard. Even today, we still have a lot of information out there. Unfortunately, I don't read Korean. I don't read Japanese. But more detailed information is in Japanese file. Because those Japanese spy, they follow everybody. But that time, Korean government, provincial government is busy. Everybody, very small group, and they cannot keep records. And the Chinese government, the same thing. They are fighting Japanese. They are transfer from one city to another city. There's no good record. Only Japanese. They follow you. Their details. So, Professor Chading say, 90% information is accurate if coming from a Japanese archive. So he was a professional, exchange professor to Japan, study this. So he spent about, according his really good, specializing in these peoples, follow these peoples. So he told me a lot of stories. So I put together, and he urged me, he said, you have to write down in the book. I wasn't at that time. So I said, I don't have much to write, only as a photo here, there. So after that, for 5 years, during maybe 3-4 years, I start searching all this information and then put together. And actually, it's a very interesting. So my youngest grandson, he also write the PPT for my grandpa's already. He said he wants to write a book too.
That's
very interesting.
And you've inspired him to follow your research as well too.
Yeah, again, another one, very interesting. We just discovered last month in Taiwan. That's a very important information. Okay, I mentioned. This is Cho Su-ang. My father wrote letter to Cho Su-ang 1944 in that Cho Su-ang. Then that's archived in this. Can you read the? Okay, it's a document in Korean. Yeah.
Yes.
So the file record has my father's letter to Cho Su-ang. So someone already translated for me. Just recently, about a couple of weeks ago. That's the.
It says, Dear Mr. Song or Cho, I'm very sorry that years have been passed and I have not been able to send your greeting. Have you been in good health during these years and public and private things are going well? I, your student, is the same as before, but life seems meaningless. According to the government gazette, our army is also directly under our government in the future, and at the same time canceled 9 treaties. It is really a lot of emotion. I feel that all of this is a result of your constant struggle and hard work. I hope that you will be healthy and I will work harder in the future. Wish Autumn good health. Student Han Seng-do, October 16th, 1944.
So I'm not sure you familiar with this night treaty. It was in those in China at that time, foreign military, Korean Liberation Army is a foreign, military in China. So they put the night restrict. So you cannot do this, you cannot do that, in the foreign country. But later they lift that. That's the reason my father wrote to the Cho Swang. He's a very, very famous person. Cho Swang and Kim Gu, they found the Liberation Independent Party, 1930 in Shanghai. Yeah, that's a so important person. And this is also 1938. This is my father's autobiography, simple one. We found last month in Taiwan. It's archived in the Taiwan government defense minister. It's hard to look for. They showed us this original document to us. This is the original document. This one, they split. Then the second page, I don't have this photo there now. So they present this to us, 2 generals, 1-star general, 2-star general. They present 80 years old file, showed us. So very interesting.
How were your emotions at that time?
I know. Something we are very. Yes, you see, we took the picture. In here, very clearly, he mentioned why he come to China for independence. His ultimate goal is free our people and out of the Japanese rule. That's why early age he came to China. Yeah, it's so sad, because. Okay, that's another story. When my father left home first time, my father, high school, I believe, still a little confused. Middle school, he graduated from Ibu. Then I believe high school, he crossed the Yalu River, went to Andong High School. Today they call Dandong. Crossed very close. So that time, I believe my father high school graduate in China. That's why he can write very good Chinese. And at that time, his borders are loose. So my father come back home, never. So after high school, he graduate. He told his parents he wants to go to join the independent movement. So my grandfather doesn't want him go. It's very dangerous for him. Also very dangerous for the family. It's under Japanese. Your family member involved anti-Japanese, so it's very dangerous. So my grandpa locked him and beat him severely. So don't go. You cannot go. Okay, it's very dangerous and also dangerous for the family. So later, my mother, my uncle, my father has beating mark left by beating. But I don't think by my grandfather. Grandfather won't beat your own kids that severe to leave a mark there. But I believe it was happening during 1932 in Shanghai, Hong Kong bomb, Ibunji bomb incident. He's one of the 12 Korean people arrested by Japanese. So they have a 2 weeks toleration. Severely, they found they are not involved, so released. I believe that marks probably left there that time, not by my grandfather, because it won't beat your kids. That'd be bad, right? So that's one thing that's interesting. So from here, but he didn't mention those things. Okay, so he said after high school graduate, he was waiting in northern China side, waiting the chance, and also involved independent movement on the north side. Then later on, then he moved to Shanghai. Yeah.
No, I mean, it takes one thing to do all this research and collect all this information, but I feel like it's another step, another motivation for you to organize all the details and present it in your book. And so I just want to ask you just if you can just share us the motivation behind you writing this book and having it available in 3 different languages. Was it Professor Chedokhan that helped you with that, or is there some sort of motivating factor?
Yes. Of course, once after I visit Professor Choi Bung-jun, he said, I have to write down, otherwise you're going to lose all this valuable information there. So from those data gather, then I start, spend more time, because I spent in China 5 years, but half the time I was traveling and to Seoul. I visit the Patriot Department of Patriot and the Veteran Department and the Independent Hall and the two university. That's let me see. Yeah, I met 2 professors. One is Kongguk. He's the writer of this the book. Can you hand me 2 books there? Yeah, Dankook University and Kongguk University. These two authors I met. Han Si-jun, yeah, that mentioned, and another professor I met is Han Sang-do. Yeah, they are from Dankook University and Kongguk University, and I visit Independent Hall, and in China I visit many places: Chongqing, Hangzhou, Shanghai, Nanjing, many places. So gather as much I can. But still a lot of information is out there, especially my father worked for the Chinese military. That section is not really disclosed. Only you can see from bio. This is from Chinese military, because he graduated Luoyang University. We talk about his, then, he wrote his autobiography here. So he urged me to write the books, otherwise just, all the valuable things will be disappear. So I tried to my best. Of course, I wrote this is actually the second book. The first book, draft books, I already print. I wrote in, chronically in order, but Professor Choi Bung-jun, he suggests just like based on the event, so changed a little bit. So he helped me. We both together give all the information together, write the Chinese first. And I send this Chinese version to Korea professor, Kim professor, he translate for me. And English, of course, everybody, my daughter, everybody together. The reason is our kids, like my kids, only know English, and my grandkids only. But our generation, our relatives, they only read the Chinese. But the majority of the history is Korean, so I have to put all 3 languages in the one book so they know the total story instead of separating. Yeah.
I think what makes your endeavor very special is the fact that you're making this information available to the public, and I'm sure it's not cheap. It requires a lot of funding. No,
I still can afford that. I should. Yeah, that's a yes. This is not for selling. Yes, I'm happy people interested to read. So yes.
Okay. So I guess just to move on. Just as your mother has been telling you anecdotes and stories about your father, have you also shared this information to your children and your grandchildren? Do you talk to them about your father?
Oh, yes. Like this grandkid already took book to school to show them. They're only 10, 11 years old. they show very interest, what happened to our grandfather. Yeah, so yes, they did. They also do PPTs themselves. They're proud of my father's, yes.
What do you hope that the next generation gets from all this information?
Okay. Spread my father's dedication to the country and the patriot. Most also important is his courage. Yeah, my father said. You see, my father can easily stay home after, so you can see from his bio, he can easily stay home working as a clerk, or easy life there. But he took different route. He took his hard journey to China to join the independent movement by himself. He didn't follow his parents now. He's by himself. Close to 20 years old, and by himself, he all the way travel. Those days, 1,000 miles takes so long to go one place to another place. So I want them to spread out his spirit-inspired younger generations, remember our roots. That's why we mentioned. So I'm proud of them. They are very show interest.
Do you think that maybe they will continue the research that you have unfinished? Is that one of your hopes?
I hope, but it's very difficult because of language. You have to know Japanese and Korean and Chinese, because all happened those days. Even these letters, it has Chinese mixed Korean. The meaning is different. Even today, I ask Korean people, the professor, they hardly to translate exactly, even they, but those days mixed. But Chinese people also do not really understand the meaning sometimes, very difficult. But luckily, the rough meaning is in here already. So for them, I know it's not easy, but I want them at least learn some Korean, at least can communicate to people. That's most important. So from this information, I just want them to be a good citizen wherever you live and a good person, and that's I wish for them. I hope for them.
And then I guess just to kind of conclude our interview, what do you think is the most important role of the San Francisco Korean American Museum?
Oh yes, thank you, San Francisco Korean American Museum. Continue to do this to uncover the story, so we'll know our roots, where we're from. Even we live in here, but our roots from there. So that's important. So for your dedication and hard work, thank you.
So I guess just one thing that I'm personally very curious about is I noticed in your archives you have the red notebook with your father's handwriting. If you're okay, do you mind sharing just a couple of the pages with us?
I mean, here, yes. Oops. Oh, another I didn't mention that is very important, the notebook, the red notebook.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, this is the one.
Yes, this is the one.
Oh, that's the one. Okay, yes.
Can you just explain briefly again the significance of this red notebook for us?
Yeah, actually, this was starting in 1946, before my father, we moved to Korea. Then he was the guard captain. Then he was the training director, training those soldiers. They escaped from Japanese troops, and the younger Korean they joined. So he's the one training their the political correct concept, whatever is training in the political. So here's about 80% the name here.
And this is all in your father's handwriting, correct?
That's all father's handwriting, yeah, some handwriting, and some notes, and the songs. Kwangpokun song, or some old song here. Yes, this is my first book. Oops. This is my first draft book, and the smaller, and here's I have more the red book inside informations, but for the other book has not that many. Yeah.
This is the first book.
Here's the Kwambukun badge. Yeah. So this all will go to Korean Liberation Hall after finish all this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Your father's sword that you have in your possession, do you mind giving us a little bit of background on how he came about obtaining that sword and how you obtained it?
Happy to. Okay, my father's mentioned the special graduate from the 3rd Army Academy. There are several, the special, symbolically they went through and graduate from that academy. Now after that, they were assigned to the military, so he has this sword. Okay, this whole of this picture when I was young, the school teacher asked me to bring my father's photo to make a pendant. So I have no other photos, this is the only one, so I cut out. After cut out now, I couldn't find my pendant, but photo is still here, but missing with the hole. Okay, I'll show you my father's sword. Okay, this story again. When we left Korea in 1956, since it's hard to carry this sword, go to China, like a weapon. So my mother gave to the Chinese elementary school to store there. So after 13 years, 1969, I went there, recovered these two swords. Wow. They still kept for me.
That's amazing.
but the shield, it was lost because in the school every year they do the performance. Kids, they're using this knife to do the performance. After then, store back. The principal still remember it's ours when I visit after 13 years. This the sword you can see from the photos. That's the.
If you don't mind, can you see
it's not sharp. It's the same. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know if there's any significance in the handle of the sword?
Yeah, okay. Right after back to Korea, that time Korea don't have own sword. It's all from Japanese. So this is actually Japanese, but it's for the Korean commander use. Yeah. This samurai sword is my father's colleague. When he retired, he gave to my father for souvenir. It's not from the government, but this originally has a letter that's all lost after 30 years. So this one you can see. You can see these are all blood stain.
Wow.
Very, the Japanese soldier, the weapon. Oops.
Again, thank you so much for your time today, giving us the oral history of your father, and also just the effort and time and patience that you took to go through all of these documents and to search for the roots of these documents. I think, at least for my generation, it's really interesting and fascinating to hear about not just the famous people or the significant people in the war, but those who are less known, who have also played such a significant role in the liberation and the just exposure of our country. And so I just want to personally thank you for your dedication.
No, you're welcome.
For all of this research. I think it means a lot, and it just makes me more proud of my heritage. And to be able to proudly say to others, "Oh, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm a proud Korean American."
Yes.
And it's because of all of your generation, right, coming in, facing the difficult time in the United States. I'm sure there wasn't that many other like comrades at that time, but the fact that you endured through all of that and still are able to share this history with us, I personally want to thank you for that.
Thank you too.
No, definitely. We really appreciate this and the fact that we'll be able to share this to the public and let other generations know. Even your grandson having interest right now, wanting to share this information with his friends. I think that's what it takes, right? Just to pass what's really special in our hearts and inspiring others to do the same. And so again, thank you, Mr. Leon 명해.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
and sharing the details about your father, Han Chang-do.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you.